Imagine holding a funeral for your 13-year-old son. You pick out a small coffin. You cry over an empty grave. You tell yourself he is at peace in the ocean. Now imagine, 24 years later, the phone rings. A relative has received a letter from the dead. It is postmarked from North Korea. And the message shatters your reality. We are still alive. This isn't fiction. This is the agonizing true story of the Terakoshi family. It is a story about a mother who crossed enemy lines 66 times just to hold her child's hand. It is a story about a father who gave up his freedom to die in a dictatorship, just to be near the son he lost. In a world of cold politics and frozen borders, this is a testament to the one force that no regime can break: the endurance of a parent's love. Chapter 1. The Empty Grave. The stretch of water separating Japan from the Korean peninsula is treacherous. It is a place of deep currents, cold winds, and for the last half-century, terrible secrets. This is the story of Takeshi Terakoshi. In 1963, at the age of 13, he went fishing and never came back. His family held a funeral. They buried an empty coffin. They mourned a life cut short by the sea. But 24 years later, the impossible happened. A letter arrived from the most isolated nation on Earth. Takeshi was alive. What followed was a 60-year saga of agonizing love, impossible choices, and cold geopolitical maneuvering. It is the story of a mother who had to accept a lie in order to hold her son's hand. It is the story of a family torn apart by the harsh realities of the Cold War. The nightmare began on May 11, 1963. It was a Saturday evening on the coast of Ishikawa Prefecture. Takeshi Terakoshi, a junior high school student, boarded a small fishing boat named the Kiyomaru. He wasn't alone. He was accompanied by two of his uncles, Shoji and Soto Terakoshi. They headed out for a routine night of fishing near the shore. When they didn't return by the next morning, a search was launched. The boat was eventually found drifting offshore. It was undamaged. There was food still on the table. But the three fishermen, Takeshi, Shoji, and Soto, were gone. Authorities concluded it was a tragic accident at sea. Perhaps the boat had collided with something, or a rogue wave had washed them overboard. For Takeshi's mother, Tomoe, the grief was absolute. Without a body, there was no closure, only an empty grave in the family plot. Life moved on. The 1960s became the 70s, then the 80s. Tomoe grew older, accepting that her eldest son was lost to the sea forever. She worked hard, raised her other children, and lived with the quiet ache of a mother who outlived her child. Then came January 1987. Exactly 24 years after the disappearance, a letter arrived at the home of Uncle Soto's sister. The handwriting was familiar. It was Soto, one of the missing uncles. The contents were earth-shattering. The letter was postmarked from Pyongyang, North Korea. It stated clearly, "We are alive." It mentioned Takeshi, who was now a grown man of 37. Später 2. The official narrative. For Tomoe, the shock was physical. Her son wasn't dead. He was in North Korea. She did not hesitate. In 1987, she boarded a plane to a country that had no diplomatic relations with Japan. The reunion in Pyongyang was overwhelming. The 13-year-old boy she remembered was now a man nearing 40. He spoke Korean. He had a new name, Kim Yong-ho. He had a wife and young children. But the joy of reunion was immediately clouded by the circumstances. North Korean officials were always present. The conversations were monitored. And then, there was the explanation. According to Takeshi and the North Korean authorities, the fishing boat had experienced engine trouble back in 1963. They claimed they drifted helplessly for days until a North Korean vessel spotted them and rescued them in a humanitarian act. They claimed they chose to stay in North Korea out of gratitude and admiration for the socialist system. This story is highly improbable. Ocean currents in that region push debris north and east towards northern Japan or Russia, not westward toward North Korea. To drift to North Korea against those currents is physically impossible. Experts and intelligence agencies believe the truth is far darker, that the boat was intercepted by North Korean agents, and the three occupants were abducted. Tomoe was faced with an agonizing dilemma. The rescue story was almost certainly a lie forced upon her son by the regime, but she realized a brutal truth. North Korea held all the cards. If she challenged their narrative, if she used the word abduction, they could cut off access to her son instantly. And so, Tomoe made a choice, born of desperate motherly love. She accepted the official narrative. She publicly thanked North Korea for saving her son. She distanced herself from the families of other abductees who were protesting against the regime. She adopted a strategy of quiet appeasement. Over the next decades, she would travel to North Korea more than 60 times. She spent her life savings and her pension buying Japanese goods to support Takeshi. He was living in Pyongyang as a vice chairman of a trade union, a position that served the regime's propaganda, but his private letters to his mother often hinted at poverty and struggle. Tomoe became his lifeline. In return, the regime allowed her to see him. Chapter 3. The Divided Truth. In the late 1990s, the issue of North Korean abductions exploded into the Japanese consciousness. The government eventually officially recognized 17 victims kidnapped during the 1970s and 82nd to train spies in Japanese language and culture. But Tomoe Terakoshi is not on that official list. Because he publicly maintains the rescue story, the Japanese government technically classifies him as a Japanese national living abroad, not an abductee. Yet, the evidence tells a different story. A former North Korean agent, and Myung Jin, testified that he saw Takeshi at a spy training school in North Korea in the late 1980s. The tragedy is deeper for the extended family. What happened to the two uncles who vanished with Takeshi? Uncle Sotu lived for several years in North Korea, sending the initial letter, before passing away from illness in 1994. But the fate of Uncle Shoji is darker. North Korea claims he died of heart failure shortly after arriving in the 1960s. However, his family in Japan believes he resisted the abduction and was executed by the regime. This created a painful rift in the Terakoshi family. While Tomoe pursued quiet diplomacy to keep access to her son, other relatives, led by Takeshi's cousin Akio, have campaigned aggressively against North Korea, demanding the truth about the abduction and the return of Shoji's remains. Two different approaches to the same trauma. In 2002, a diplomatic breakthrough occurred. North Korea admitted to abducting Japanese citizens, and 5 were allowed to return home. In the wake of this, Takeshi was permitted to visit Japan for the first time in 39 years, but his return was vastly different from the others. He did not come as a liberated captive. He came as the deputy head of a North Korean delegation. In press conferences, he appeared stiff. He read scripted remarks praising the North Korean leadership and reiterated the rescue story. It was clear to many observers that his wife, children, and grandchildren back in Pyongyang were effectively hostages ensuring his compliance. After just a few days in his homeland, visiting his childhood home and his ancestral's grave, Takeshi left his mother again. He returned to North Korea. Chapter 4. Final Sacrifices. While Tomoe's relentless travel was highly publicized, the actions of Takeshi's father, Tazaemon, were quieter but shockingly profound. Tazaemon had not been on the boat in 1963. For decades, he watched his wife travel back and forth. During a visit to Pyongyang, Takeshi reportedly told his father he wanted to care for him in his old age. Moved by this, in 2001, Tazaemon made an extraordinary decision. He left his life in free Japan and moved permanently to Pyongyang. He chose to spend his final years under a totalitarian dictatorship just to be a father to the boy he had lost. Tazaemon died in Pyongyang 7 years later, in 2008. He was buried in North Korean soil, alongside the uncles who vanished in 1963. As the years passed, Tomoe's health declined. The grueling trips to North Korea became impossible. Her 66 visits had exhausted her body and her finances. She spent her final years in Japan, waiting for news, still hoping that perhaps the political winds would shift and allow Takeshi to return for good. That day never came. On February 25, 2024, Tomoe Terakoshi died at the age of 92. The Terakoshi case remains one of the most complex and heartbreaking chapters in the history of North Korean-Japanese relations. The family is now divided even in death. Tomoe buried in Japan, her husband, and Takeshi's uncles buried in North Korea. Takeshi remains in Pyongyang. Now an old man himself, Tomoe Terakoshi made a mother's ultimate calculation. She sacrificed the truth to gain access. She lived a lie so that her son wouldn't have to face the regime alone. In an impossible situation, it was the only way she knew how to love him. Chapter 5. A National Nightmare. The Terakoshi family's pain, while unique in its specifics, echoes a much wider, silent scream that has haunted Japan for decades. They are not the only ones who stared at the ocean and wondered, In the late 1970s and early 80s, people were vanishing from Japanese coastal towns like smoke. A 13-year-old girl named Megumi Yokota disappeared while walking home from badminton practice. Couples were snatched from beaches. Students vanished from Europe. For years, the Japanese government and media dismissed these disappearances as runaways or accidents. The families were left alone in the dark, ridiculed for suggesting that North Korean agents were stealing their children. It wasn't until 2002 that the truth was undeniable. North Korea had run a state-sponsored kidnapping program on an industrial scale. Their goal? To steal identities and force victims to teach Japanese language and culture to spies. The very spies who would later blow up airliners and assassinate dissidents. The tragedy of the Terakoshi family stands as a stark contrast to the Yokotas and the Arimotos. While Tomoe chose silence to gain access, the Yokota family chose a loud, defiant fight for justice. Seiki Yokota, Megumi's mother, has stood in front of microphones for 40 years, demanding the return of her daughter. She never bowed to the regime. Both mothers paid with their lives. The North Korean abduction issue is not just a diplomatic dispute. It is a collection of hundreds of frozen bedrooms, birthdays celebrated for empty chairs, and aging parents dying one by one. Their last breath used to whisper a name that no one answers. Whether they fought the regime or tried to appease it, every family was broken by it. The Terakoshis remind us that in the face of such calculated cruelty, survival itself is an act of defiance. Tomoe and Tazaemon Terakoshi were not politicians. They were parents. When faced with an impossible wall, they didn't try to tear it down with force. They climbed over it with love. Tomoe sacrificed her truth, and Tazaemon sacrificed his freedom. They lived a lie so their son wouldn't have to face the regime alone. In the end, their story isn't just about abduction or politics. It is about the terrifying, beautiful lengths a parent will go to for their child. They prove that while borders can separate bodies, no army on earth can sever the bond of blood. If you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, please subscribe to this channel. By watching and sharing, you help ensure that the names of the missing are never forgotten. Thank you for watching.